Welcome to The Quiet Scientist. I'm so glad you're here, wherever you found yourself tonight, and however your day has gone. I hope this gentle corner of science offers you a little calm, a little wonder, and maybe, just maybe, a little sleep. Tonight, we're going to wander through a question that's as personal as it is profound. A question that lives quietly behind every conversation, every favorite song, every time you look at an old photograph and feel that soft tug in your chest. What is memory, and where does it go? You've carried memories for as long as you've existed. Some stay bright and close, like a lantern at your side. Others drift just beyond reach, flickering like stars you can almost name but never quite touch. Some are warm and glowing, others sit like unopened boxes in a forgotten attic. You don't know what's inside until something unexpected knocks the dust away. I hope this story helps you relax, maybe even drift into sleep. But I must offer a small warning. Sometimes, the strangeness of memory, the poetry of it, the science, the quiet ache, can make it hard to let go of your thoughts just yet. If that happens, well, at least you'll wake up knowing a bit more about why the smell of vanilla makes you cry, or how your body remembers songs you haven't heard in years. Before we drift too far into tonight's story, a gentle like or subscribe would mean a lot, and it helps. The Quiet Scientists keep growing quietly, one sleepy mind at a time. And if you'd like, I'd love to know where in the world you're listening from, and what time it is for you right now. Midnight in Vermont, early dawn in Lisbon, a rainy afternoon in Manila. The comments below are like a quiet map of shared moments, scattered through time zones and tucked under blankets. Just a gentle reminder, while tonight's story draws from real science, it isn't medical advice, and it's not meant to diagnose or explain your personal memory. It's simply here to guide you softly through wonder. So, go ahead and get comfortable. Let your shoulders drop. Maybe take a deep breath in through your nose and let it out through your mouth. Again, slower this time. And one more, even slower. Let the weight of the day settle away. There's nothing to do now but listen, drift, and explore this soft mystery together. Let's begin. Once upon a time, not in a fairy tale, but in the gentle rustling of leaves, in the flick of a lizard's tail, in the patient growth of sea sponges, memory was already quietly at work, long before humans scribbled words on paper or carved symbols into cave walls, long before books or calendars or even spoken language. Life had a way of remembering. It was simple. At first, primitive organisms responded differently after repeated experiences. A single-celled creature, brushed on one side over and over again, would begin to flinch in anticipation. It had no brain, no nerves, but something inside it changed. A ghost of experience lived on, a preference, a pattern, a tiny molecular whisper. This happened before. This might not seem like memory in the way you know it, but it is. It's memory in its earliest costume, survival. You see, memory didn't evolve to make you nostalgic. It didn't show up so you could replay your high school graduation or remember the lyrics to a favorite lullaby. Memory first emerged to help organisms not die. If you touched a hot stove once, memory makes sure you don't touch it again. If a predator lurked near that rock, memory nudges you to slither, hop, or sprint the other way next time. Even plants, in their quiet slowness, can show signs of memory. Mimosa pudica, the sensitive plant, folds its leaf when touched. But when touched over and over again without harm, it learns to stop reacting. Days later, it still remembers not to waste energy on what won't hurt it. It's beautiful, isn't it? This slow, wordless remembering, this ancient choreography of caution and repetition. In this early form, memory didn't need a mind, only time, repetition, and change. It lived in chemistry, in the quiet turning of proteins, in the arrangement of molecules along a cell wall. It was nature's way of whispering to itself, "That was useful. Let's keep it." Of course, memory would grow more elaborate. Eventually, brains would arrive. Neurons would appear like tangled vines. Synapses would bloom. And those early whispers would become echoes, then voices, then entire symphonies of experience. But even in its simplest forms, memory is not passive. It's not a dusty library or a row of labeled jars. It is living, active, always reshaping itself. Every time something is remembered, it is slightly rewritten, touched again, altered by context, emotion, or even the act of recalling. In a way, remembering is also a kind of creating. And that raises something curious. If memory is constantly rewritten, then what exactly is it preserving? Perhaps memory isn't a vault. Maybe it's more like a garden. Some seeds grow wild, some are trimmed, some bloom only when the season is right. Some are buried, dormant, waiting for the right scent or sound or emotion to coax them back. In the ancient past, this was all nature needed, a system that learned without needing to think. But now memory is everything. It is the music that runs beneath your thoughts. It is how you know who your mother is. It's how you drive, walk, speak. It's how you find your way back home after a long day. You live in memory, and it lives in you. So, where did it begin? Maybe in the sea, in a cell, in a twitch, maybe in a flicker of light on an ancient shore. And from there, it grew. You notice the stillness in the room, the quiet hum of night just beyond your window. Something about the silence makes you more aware of the thoughts drifting through your mind, some loud, others barely there, like shadows skimming across water. And you wonder, quietly, how those thoughts even came to be. Not just what you're thinking now, but how your mind holds on to what came before. Somewhere, a long, long time ago, long before the word memory was ever spoken, the first spark flickered. Imagine a world without minds, no stories, no names, no regrets or nostalgia, just simple life, pulsing and reacting. In that world, something remarkable began to stir. A molecule reacted differently the second time it encountered something. A chemical pathway grew stronger with each repetition. It was an awareness, not yet, but it was a beginning. Take, for example, a tiny sea slug called a plesia. Scientists have studied this humble creature because its nervous system is large and simple, easy to observe, easy to learn from. When a plesia is poked, it reflexively withdraws its gill. But after repeated gentle pokes, the reflex diminishes. The slug remembers that the touch isn't dangerous. That simple act, growing less reactive, is memory in its earliest behavioral form. A change in response because of experience. And that's the heart of memory, experience, held in the body. What's fascinating is how this change isn't stored in a notebook somewhere inside the creature. It's not locked in a cabinet or saved to a file. Instead, it's written into the structure of its cells. the way certain synapses release chemicals, the way specific neurons fire more or less readily. Memory, even here, is change, change that lasts. As you lie still, you can almost feel it happening in yourself, how your body adjusts to the quiet, how your thoughts begin to slow. Maybe your breathing syncs with the rhythm of these words. Maybe your shoulders let go of just a little more tension. Your body, too, is responding to experience. It is remembering what calm feels like. Now, imagine life continuing to evolve. The first brains appear, just clusters of neurons. Really, small knots of responsiveness. Over time, they become more intricate, more able to hold traces of the past. These aren't memories the way we understand them, not yet. But they are patterns, ways of reacting that are shaped by what came before. Somewhere along the way, those patterns become layered, interconnected, capable of echoing far longer than before. This is the threshold where memory steps out of the realm of pure biology and becomes something closer to experience. And even at this early stage, the purpose of memory is clear: to improve survival. A creature that remembers which fruit is ripe or which path leads to a predator has an advantage. Memory is an evolutionary superpower, but it's not just for avoiding danger, it's also for seeking reward. A bird that remembers where it cached its seeds last winter has a better chance of surviving the next. But survival alone doesn't explain the full richness of memory. Even the most basic creatures store more than just danger signals. They remember patterns, places, perhaps in some faint way. They remember familiarity. And this opens the door to something softer. The possibility that memory is not just about fear or food, it's also about connection. Pause for a moment. Think about the simplest connection you feel right now. Maybe to your pillow, maybe to someone you love, maybe to this story as it gently winds through your mind. That sense of connection lives in memory, not just in ideas, but in the associations that form between sights, sounds, feelings. This is how memory begins to bloom into something more human, not just a function of survival, but a source of meaning. Long before we could name it, memory was there, in the way a baby gazelle recognizes its mother's scent, in the way salmon return to the exact stream where they were born, in the way migrating birds follow invisible routes passed down through generations. These aren't conscious memories. They're embedded, woven into biology, but they are memory nonetheless, coded echoes of the past, still guiding the present. Even jellyfish, who have no brain at all, exhibit behavior that reflects simple learning. When repeatedly exposed to certain conditions, they adjust their swimming patterns. Their nerve nets, a distributed, decentralized network, still allow for experience to alter response. Somehow, they, too, learn. It's humbling to realize that memory didn't begin with us. It didn't even begin with thinking. It began with the body, with the quiet decision to change, to adapt, to carry something forward. And yet, the seeds of what we now call mind were being planted even then. Because as soon as you can remember, you can compare, you can anticipate, you can begin to build expectations, stories, choices. You become more than a reaction. You become a creature of prediction. And that, perhaps, is the great turning point. When memory evolves not just to record, but to prepare. Your brain today is the product of billions of years of such layering. Each night you sleep, your brain rehearses, prunes, strengthens, all to help you be ready for what might come next. That is the beauty of memory. It is always working on tomorrow, even as it holds yesterday. So, maybe memory didn't have a single spark. Maybe it was a slow burn, a glow that spread from cell to cell, species to species, until one day, it looked up at the stars and wondered if it had always been there. And maybe, just maybe, it had. You keep your eyes on the ceiling, letting your gaze soften until the shadows blur together. Maybe it's the way your mind is starting to drift, or maybe it's just the dim light. But something about the dark corners makes you think of forgotten places. Not physical ones, but the tucked away folds of thought, memory, imagination. That strange space where something once known becomes distant, like a voice calling from the far end of a tunnel. Long before science gave us MRI machines and molecular pathways, people still wondered about memory, what it was, where it lived, why it could vanish so easily, and yet sometimes linger forever. The earliest attempts to explain memory weren't about synapses or neurons. They were stories, symbols, poetic guesses at something invisible. Take Plato, for instance. He imagined the human mind as a block of wax. When you experience something, it leaves an imprint, like a signet ring pressed into soft wax. A sharp, clear memory meant a deep, clean impression. But if the wax was too soft, too hard, or uneven, the mark wouldn't last. It's a lovely image, fragile, precise, and fleeting. But it also tells you something else. Even the ancients knew memory wasn't perfect. That impressions faded, that no matter how vivid a moment felt, time could erode it into a faint blur. Later, Aristotle suggested another metaphor, memory as an animal track in the forest. Something passed here once. You might not see the creature again, but the ground remembers, a trace remains, and these metaphors, the wax tablet, the forest path, they're not wrong. They're just older ways of saying something we're still learning. That memory is physical, that it leaves marks, however delicate, in the terrain of the brain. But not all ancient stories were so gentle. In Greek mythology, there's the river Lethe, the river of forgetting. When souls passed into the afterlife, they drank from its waters to forget their earthly lives. Only those who resisted would remember enough to live again. Forgetting wasn't just inevitable, it was necessary. It was a price for peace. And isn't that still true, in a way? You can't carry every memory. Not all of them are meant to stay. Some must wash away so that others can shine brighter. As civilizations grew, so did their metaphors. The mind became a scroll, a library, a filing cabinet, and then, with the arrival of machines, the metaphors changed again. The mind became a camera, a tape recorder, a computer. But each of these came with a quiet misunderstanding. That memory is about storage, that it's a matter of filing away data and retrieving it, perfectly intact. But memory isn't a vault. It isn't a file that sits untouched until you open it again. No, memory is more like a performance. Each time you recall something, your mind is reenacting it, reconstructing it, and sometimes rewriting it. Imagine a theater. The same play is performed night after night, but the actors shift slightly, the lighting changes, a line is delivered differently. That's your memory. Each time you remember, you stage the moment again, and with every performance, the memory changes, just a little. This doesn't mean your memories aren't real. It means they're alive. And perhaps that's why memory has always been so hard to define. It moves, it breathes, it hides, then resurfaces when you least expect it. A smell, a sound, a name whispered in the middle of the night. Suddenly, you're 12 years old again, standing under summer rain. The ancients didn't need neuroscience to know this. They only had to live long enough to feel it. How memory isn't a possession, but a rhythm. How the past doesn't sit still, but hums just beneath the present. Even now, as you lie still, you may feel it, the edge of something familiar just beyond your reach. Not a memory you're trying to recall, but one that's quietly watching from the wings, waiting for the right note, or scent, or story to make its entrance. And this is where the science of memory meets the poetry of it. For thousands of years, humans have tried to hold on to the past. We've painted on cave walls, carved names into trees, written books, taken photos, built digital clouds, all in the hope that we could outsmart forgetting. But memory doesn't live in stone or silicon. It lives in the spaces between neurons, between emotions, between you and the person you were when the moment first happened. It's not fixed, it's relational. It shifts as you do. And isn't that strangely beautiful? That your memories are not frozen in time, but grow with you, or fade as you need them to. They become part of your story, shaped by your present just as much as by your past. So maybe Plato's wax was never meant to be permanent. Maybe it was always meant to soften in the warmth of your mind, reshaping with every new impression. Maybe forgetting isn't failure, but freedom. The shadows on your ceiling shift again. Your breath is slower now. The theater of your mind, quiet, but not empty. Because somewhere inside you, in the hush between thoughts, memories are stirring, some clear, some hazy, some yet to arrive. And just like the philosophers who once gazed at stars and wondered what the mind could hold, you lie still now, wondering too, not for answers, just to remember how it feels to remember. The ceiling fades from your view now as you slowly close your eyes. Not from sleep, at least, not yet, but from a kind of inner turning. You begin to sense a world beneath the quiet surface of thought. A web, or maybe a forest. Something alive. Something sprawling. You can't see it, but you feel it faintly. The way roots feel rain before it arrives. Inside your head. The garden is awake. That's what your brain is, in a way. A living garden of electricity and chemistry, endlessly growing and pruning itself. Millions of neurons, branching and reaching and touching, not all at once, but in waves, in whispers. Each time you remember something, some corner of this garden stirs. Neurons don't store memories the way a computer does, not in labeled folders or orderly stacks. They hold them in patterns, in relationships, in the strength of connections between cells. The more you use a certain path, say, a childhood phone number, or the way to your favorite cafe, the stronger and more reliable that path becomes. Like a trail through tall grass that's been walked 1,000 times. And like any trail, if you stop walking it, it begins to fade. The grass grows tall again. The garden forgets. But it doesn't do so randomly. Your brain is constantly tending this garden. It strengthens the paths you use most often and gently lets others go. This isn't laziness, it's elegance, efficiency. It's your mind adapting to what you need now, not what you once needed. There's a process called synaptic pruning, a quiet, lifelong gardener in your brain that clears away unused connections so new ones can grow. It happens most dramatically in childhood, when your brain is a jungle of possibilities. But even now, it continues every time you learn something new, or even think deeply about something familiar. Your neural garden changes shape. And here's something curious. Every time you recall a memory, it becomes vulnerable, like a flower picked and held in your hand. It's no longer protected by its stem. The act of remembering brings it out into the open, where it can be reinforced, but also reshaped, or even rewritten. That means your memories aren't snapshots. They're stories, retold again and again, with slight differences each time, colored by the mood you're in, tinted by who you've become since the last time you remembered. And that's not a flaw, it's a feature, because this garden is alive, and living things evolve. Sometimes, when a memory comes to the surface, it brings more than facts. It brings emotion. Your palms sweat, your heart races, your eyes sting a little, not because the memory is happening again, but because the pathways that connect that memory to your body are still active, still fertile, still growing. That's why memories can feel so present, so vivid, like time folding in on itself, like standing in two places at once, here and somewhere else entirely. And then there are those moments when a memory blooms without warning, a word, a taste, the sound of a song you haven't heard since you were small. Suddenly, the garden shimmers. And there it is, the smell of sunscreen on a hot sidewalk, the weight of your backpack on the last day of school, your grandmother's laugh floating from another room. These moments feel like magic, but they're just the garden responding, an old trail lit up again by the right spark. Still, not all memories bloom so easily. Some remain buried beneath layers of time and silence. Others are wrapped in emotion too heavy to approach. The garden grows wild in places, overgrown, tangled. That's okay, too. Not everything needs to be visited. Some memories prefer the quiet of shadow, but they're still there, still part of the ecosystem of you. Even when you sleep, the garden doesn't stop. In fact, sleep may be when it works the hardest. During certain stages, especially deep sleep and dreaming, your brain sorts through the day's experiences. It decides what to keep, what to let go. It strengthens some connections, prunes others, and while you rest, your memories settle into place like dew collecting on leaves. That's one reason sleep matters so much for learning. Without it, the new paths you've walked during the day don't quite take hold. It's like planting seeds and forgetting to water them. So tonight, even as you lie here gently listening, your brain is preparing to tend its garden. Maybe tomorrow it will hold on to a moment from today. A smile, a phrase, the feeling of air on your skin. Or maybe it will let that moment drift away, making room for something new. You don't have to decide. The garden knows. And as you drift deeper into stillness, it's comforting to think that every thought, every glance, every first kiss, every goodbye, they all left something behind, not as permanent fixtures, but as growth, as texture, as color on the trellis of your inner world. Some people wonder why we can't remember everything. But imagine if you did. Imagine never forgetting a single face in a crowd, a single phrase from every conversation, every wrong turn, every moment of embarrassment or pain. It would be unbearable. You drown in details. The beauty of memory lies in its balance. It holds on and lets go. So now, as the shadows in your mind begin to soften, and the threads of thought unwind like vines finding rest. You might picture your own brain, not as a machine, but as a moonlit garden, breathing, swaying, remembering what matters, and maybe, just maybe, making space for something beautiful to grow. There's a shift in the air, subtle, almost imperceptible, as if a window in your mind has opened just a crack. You breathe in through your nose, not expecting anything in particular, but something stirs anyway, a scent, or the ghost of one. It vanishes before you can name it, but for a moment, it carries you somewhere else. This is the quiet power of smell. More than any other sense, scent has a direct line to memory, not just to memory as information, names, numbers, places, but to memory as emotion, as feeling, a whiff of perfume, the musty sweetness of old paper, the sharpness of lemon or mint, and suddenly you're back in a moment you weren't even trying to remember. Not just seeing it, but feeling it entirely, instantly. You might wonder why that happens. Why does scent, more than sight, sound, or touch, act like such a potent key to the past? The answer, like most things in the mind, lies in the architecture of the brain. When you smell something, the signal travels through the olfactory bulb, a structure nestled just behind your nose. But here's the twist. This pathway bypasses the thalamus, the brain's usual relay center. Instead, it heads straight for the limbic system, where your amygdala and hippocampus live, the emotional heart and the memory keeper of your mind. It's a shortcut, a fast lane, a back door into the parts of you that feel and remember most vividly. That's why the smell of freshly cut grass doesn't just tell you this is grass. It tells you when you first smelled it. It tells you how the sun felt on your arms, what song was playing, who you were with. The scent pulls back the curtain, and the memory steps forward. You don't choose these moments. They arrive, unannounced, and often in the strangest places, in a grocery aisle, in a forgotten drawer, in the scent of someone else's shampoo. And sometimes, it's not even the exact smell. It's close enough, familiar enough. Your brain fills in the rest, and suddenly you're sitting at your grandmother's kitchen table, even if she's been gone for years. It's bittersweet, isn't it? How something as invisible as a scent can bring back someone you've lost, or a version of yourself you thought had faded. Scent doesn't ask permission. It doesn't wait for logic. It just arrives. And in doing so, reminds you that time is not so linear after all. In fact, memory rarely follows straight lines. It loops and tangles. It circles back when you least expect it, especially when you're tired or relaxed or just barely awake, like now. That's when the smallest things can open a floodgate. You might lie in bed and catch a scent that isn't really there, a phantom aroma. Scientists call it an olfactory hallucination, but that sounds too clinical. It's more like a sensory echo, a trace that never really left. Maybe it's the smell of rain on asphalt, or clean sheets, or wood smoke curling in the cold. Whatever it is, it carries something deeper than the scent itself. It carries meaning, and that's the secret, really. Smell is tied to memory, not just because of how the brain is built, but because of how you live. Your first years of life are filled with scent. Long before you know how to spell vanilla or cedar or lavender, your body is already recording them. As you grow, these smells become braided into your experiences: birthday cakes, school books, the hug of someone safe. They become anchors, tethers, little time machines made of air. It's no coincidence that people with memory loss often respond most strongly to scent. When other doors are closed, scent sometimes finds a crack. It slips in and lights something up. A smile, a word, a song remembered. Even in Alzheimer's patients, certain smells can awaken fragments thought to be lost. A perfume, a baked apple, a particular soap. It's not magic, but it feels like it. And maybe that's the most mysterious part, that memory can be so physical and yet so ineffable, so rooted and so floating. You can't grasp a scent. You can't hold it in your hand, but it can hold you. You may not remember what you wore on a given day, but you might remember how the bakery on the corner smelled. You might remember the dust and citrus of your grandfather's car, the chlorine at a summer pool, the eucalyptus of a cough drop pressed into your palm. You might not even realize how much scent has shaped your memories until one catches you off guard. Then you feel it, a thump in your chest, a softness behind your eyes. You've been carried away before you even have time to resist. And as you lie here now, in a room filled mostly with silence, maybe you start to wonder what your own scent trail looks like, what memories live in your favorite candle, in your closet, in the books you've read more than once. Maybe someone else remembers you by your scent, the way your scarf holds a trace of your shampoo, or how the smell of your cooking still lingers in a kitchen long after you've gone. We leave memories behind in more ways than we know. So, tonight, as your breathing grows slower and the edges of the day begin to blur, you might let scent become part of your dreaming. Let it take you somewhere gentle. Let it bring back something you didn't know you'd missed. And if a memory floats in, welcome it, even if it smells like yesterday. The air feels heavier now, in that comforting way soft blankets do, like a hush settling gently over everything. You're not quite asleep, but you've drifted far enough from the surface that time feels a little strange, a little slower. Thoughts come and go like clouds across a moonlit sky. And somewhere in that in-between space, your brain is still at work, not chattering, not worrying, just quietly organizing, tidying, sifting through the day's experience and deciding what to keep, what to release. This is the hidden labor of memory. You might imagine that memory is formed in the moment, that the instant something happens, it gets filed away neatly like a page slipped into a drawer. But that's not quite how it works. Experiences are more like raw materials, scattered, unshaped, glowing with emotion or urgency. The real magic, the transformation into something lasting, happens later. Often, while you sleep, and not just any sleep, deep sleep, dream sleep, slow wave, and REM. These stages carry different rhythms, different brain waves, and each plays its own part in how your memories settle into place. During slow wave sleep, your brain replays the day, not in vivid dreams, but in quiet pulses of activity. It's like a whisper, neurons firing in patterns that mimic what you've recently learned or experienced. A conversation, a route you walked, a new idea you tried to understand. It's not a repeat exactly, but a rehearsal, a silent, invisible run-through. This replay isn't just passive, it strengthens the pathways between neurons. It makes the memory more stable, more retrievable, more real. Then comes REM sleep, the dreaming phase. Here, the brain gets creative, it begins to make connections, sometimes strange, sometimes beautiful. It links new experiences with old ones, weaves emotion into narrative. This is where dreams can get surreal, where your third grade teacher ends up in your kitchen, or you find yourself running through a city that doesn't exist. But it's not nonsense. It's your brain exploring, testing, integrating. This is also why dreams can feel so emotionally charged. During REM sleep, the amygdala, the brain's emotion center, is especially active. Your brain isn't just filing memories, it's giving them weight, color, mood, meaning. It's during these quiet night hours, when the rest of you is still, that your memories begin to settle like sediment in water, slowly, layer by layer, and perhaps that's why sleep-deprived memories often feel fuzzy. When you don't sleep, the day doesn't finish writing itself. The edges of your experience remain blurred, unsorted, like puzzle pieces left in the box. Even short naps can make a difference. A 20-minute rest, a brief drifting off in the afternoon sun. These moments give the brain just enough time to stitch new thoughts into its tapestry, not always deeply, but enough to matter. You might think back to moments when a problem seemed impossible until you woke up and knew what to do, or when you struggled to remember a fact, only for it to pop into your head after a night's sleep. That's memory too, quietly ripening in the dark. And it's not just about facts or events. Emotional memories go through this nighttime transformation as well. A hard conversation, a moment of joy, a sense of disappointment. The brain doesn't just remember what happened, it remembers how you felt. And sometimes, sleep helps soften the edges, dulls the sting, or lets the joy expand. Sleep, then, isn't a break from memory. It's part of the process. There's something poetic in that. That rest isn't passive. That even in your most vulnerable, most relaxed state, your brain is gently at work, not overthinking, not planning, just holding what matters. And what matters isn't always what you expect. The brain has its own quiet criteria: emotional salience, repetition, novelty, context. That's why you might remember the look in someone's eyes more vividly than their words, or why a minor moment, someone laughing at just the right time, sticks with you longer than an entire lecture. Memory favors meaning over volume, connection over chronology. And so, even now, as you lie here listening, your brain might be starting its work, not with loud declarations, but with tiny adjustments, strengthening one pathway, letting another fade, beginning the process that will, by morning, make certain thoughts just a little easier to retrieve. Some memories, of course, never even reach this stage. They drift away. They never take root. That's okay. Not every leaf becomes a tree. Not every moment is meant to last. But the ones that do, they settle in gradually. They become part of your landscape. And the next time something reminds you, a smell, a sound, a question, they'll rise to the surface. Familiar? Welcome. This, too, is why the bedtime hour is so gentle for memory. Not because of what you're trying to remember, but because of what you're not trying to do. There's no pressure, no effort, just softness. And in that softness, your brain has room to breathe, room to sort, to settle, to begin the delicate work of remembering. So, as you slip deeper into this quiet place, you can trust that your mind is already at work in the background, gently deciding what to keep, what to reshape, and what to release. Like a librarian closing up for the night, turning off the lights one by one, already knowing which stories are worth opening again tomorrow. The night continues to fold around you, Layer by gentle layer, somewhere outside, the wind hums through leaves. Or maybe it's just your breath, steady and quiet. You don't have to move. You don't even have to think. But your mind is still weaving, still reaching through soft threads of time, deciding what stays close and what can drift away. Not all memories are built to last. Some arrive like a spark and vanish just as quickly. Others linger for years, decades even, resurfacing with vivid clarity at the strangest moments. Some are gone before you even realize you had them, and others, surprisingly, grow clearer over time, not because they're replayed, but because they've settled in, like sediment in a still lake. Memory, it turns out, has many forms, and your brain doesn't store them all the same way. There's short-term memory, the kind that holds information for just a moment or two. It's what lets you remember a phone number long enough to dial it, or lets you carry on a conversation, keeping track of the beginning of a sentence while your mouth is still finishing it. It's fleeting, fragile, a mental whiteboard that's wiped clean every few seconds. Then there's working memory, similar but more flexible. It's like a mental notepad that doesn't just store, but manages. It lets you do math in your head, hold a shopping list while scanning a store, or juggle ideas during problem solving. It's your brain's mental workspace, always shifting, always balancing, but like any workspace, it can only hold so much at once. And then, of course, there's long-term memory, the vast, tangled landscape that holds the story of your life, your first day of school, your favorite book, the lyrics to a song you haven't heard in 20 years but can still sing by heart. Long-term memory is where things settle when they've been repeated, felt deeply, or tied to something meaningful. It's where your personal history lives, not in perfect order, not always complete, but always present, like an old friend who knows most of your stories. But even long-term memory isn't a single system. There are categories within it, types of remembering that feel very different from one another. There's explicit memory, which includes the facts you know and the events you can describe, things like remembering who invented the light bulb or recalling your last vacation. These are memories you can access on purpose, like opening a file. And then there's implicit memory, which works quietly in the background. It's the kind that lets you ride a bike, type on a keyboard, or tie your shoes without thinking. You don't have to remember how. Your body just knows. These are the skills that live in your muscles and reflexes, even when your mind isn't paying attention. There's also a special kind of long-term memory called episodic memory, memories of specific moments, rich with context, where you were, what you were wearing, the light in the room, the smell of cinnamon in the air. These memories are tied to your experience, to the texture of your life. They make up the narrative thread of who you are. Then there's semantic memory, the general knowledge you carry, the capital of France, what a triangle is, how many legs a spider has. These memories aren't linked to a particular moment. They're facts you've absorbed along the way, polished smooth by time. Your brain moves information between these systems constantly, sometimes without your awareness. A name you hear once might vanish in seconds, but if you repeat it or attach it to something meaningful, a face, a story, a feeling, it starts to sink in. It begins its slow migration toward the long term. And this migration isn't automatic. It requires attention, emotion, relevance. That's why it's easier to remember stories than lists. Why you remember the way someone made you feel more than what they wore. The more a memory connects to your senses, to your feelings, to something you already know, the more likely it is to stay. But staying doesn't always mean staying the same. Long-term memories evolve. They soften at the edges. Sometimes they sharpen too, becoming more vivid with each retelling. But they're never static. Every time you access them, you change them a little. Add something, forget something, color them with your present self. This might sound unreliable, but maybe it's not meant to be reliable. Maybe memory isn't about perfect recall. Maybe it's about growth, reflection, adaptation. Maybe memory isn't a photograph, but a painting you keep adding to, layer by layer. And then there's emotional memory, which doesn't care much for logic or sequence. It remembers how you felt, the rush of joy, the sting of rejection, the comfort of a voice that made everything okay. These memories live in the body as much as the mind. They linger in your muscles, your breath, your heartbeat. They're the reason some moments stay, even when their details are long gone. You might not remember the joke, but you remember laughing. You might forget the words, but remember the warmth in someone's voice. These are the memories that whisper rather than shout, and they're often the ones we return to when we need grounding, or comfort, or clarity. So, lying here now, you might begin to feel the presence of these different kinds of memory, not in a structured way, not like shelves in a library, but like streams flowing through a quiet field. Some are fast and shallow, others are deep and still. Some come and go with ease, others take time to reach. And in this moment, between waking and sleep, your brain is deciding which streams to follow, which ones to let pass, which ones to carry forward into tomorrow. No pressure, no judgment, just a gentle current, a knowing flow. Because whether it's short or long, sharp or soft, every memory has its place, even the ones that fade, even the ones you never knew you kept. You exhale slowly, almost without noticing, and feel something loosen inside you. Maybe it's your shoulders, your jaw, or just a thought you've finally let drift away. It's not important to name it, just noticing the release is enough. Not everything is meant to stay, and your brain knows that. We often talk about memory as if its only job is to remember, to hold on, to preserve, to keep things intact. But memory has another skill, one just as essential and just as wise. It knows how to forget, not by accident, not always, but on purpose. At first, that may sound like a flaw, like a design that's incomplete. But forgetting isn't failure, it's function. It's what allows you to make space for the new, the useful, the meaningful. If memory is a garden, forgetting is the pruning, the clearing of branches so sunlight can reach the roots. Think about how overwhelming it would be if your brain remembered everything. Every glance, every noise, every color, every word, every face in every crowd. You'd be buried under details, paralyzed by choices. You wouldn't be able to find what mattered most. That's why forgetting is a kind of mercy. It softens what's too sharp. It fades what's no longer needed. It lets you focus, decide, grow, and your brain is incredibly good at it. It doesn't just forget passively. It has systems designed for forgetting. One of them involves a protein called synaptic weakening, which, as its name suggests, helps reduce the strength of certain neural connections. If a pathway isn't used, if an idea isn't revisited, it gradually fades. The signal dims. The path grows over, just like the trail in the garden. Another system is more subtle. It involves what's known as active forgetting, where the brain deliberately removes connections that are no longer useful. Recent studies suggest that certain cells in the hippocampus help erase old associations, making room for new ones. It's not destruction, it's rebalancing. This is why memory and forgetting aren't opposites. They're partners. They work together in a quiet rhythm, one keeping the other in check. And forgetting isn't just about what disappears, it's about what remains. The act of forgetting clears the way for stronger recall of what matters most. That's why you remember your first heartbreak more than your 10th math quiz, or why you can recall a single kind sentence from years ago, but forget what you had for lunch last Tuesday. Your mind is always filtering, always refining, and sometimes forgetting is a form of healing. There are memories that hurt, that press too hard, that arrive uninvited and stay too long. In these moments, forgetting is more than useful, it's essential. It's how your mind protects itself, how it moves forward without dragging every weight behind it. This doesn't mean those memories are truly gone. Some may return, softer than before. Others may stay buried. And some might slowly dissolve, like fog lifting over time. But the forgetting itself is not a loss. It's a process of gentleness, of knowing when to let go. There's a phrase you may have heard, motivated forgetting. It's the idea that the mind sometimes forgets things on purpose, to preserve your emotional balance. Not in a conscious way, but in a protective one, like closing a window when the wind becomes too sharp. The memory doesn't vanish, it's just pushed aside, stored somewhere less immediate, until you're ready. And then there's the forgetting that happens with age. Sometimes people see this as decline, but in many ways, it's just another shift in balance. As we grow older, we accumulate more memories than our younger selves could imagine. The brain adapts, lets go of small details, and leans into patterns, meaning, and emotion. We may forget names, but remember stories. Forget dates, but recall the way someone made us feel. In this way, forgetting becomes a kind of wisdom, a focusing of attention, a gentle sorting of what deserves to stay close. And just as there are memories we hold, there are those we share and forget together. Collective forgetting shapes history, culture, and relationships. Families sometimes forget in tandem, letting certain stories slip into silence. Cultures forget chapters of the past they aren't ready to face. We edit, rewrite, reframe, not always to deceive, but to survive. And within each of us, that same instinct plays out. There are things you no longer recall because you no longer need to. Old passwords, childhood routines, the color of a jacket you once loved but haven't worn in years. You didn't choose to forget. Your brain chose for you. A quiet gesture of efficiency, of care. Sometimes forgetting is accidental, a misplaced item, a face you can't quite name, a word just out of reach. You feel the absence, like an itch on your tongue. But even then, your brain is working in the background, quietly searching its shelves. And often, the missing piece returns, not when you demand it, but when you stop looking. This is the mystery of forgetting. It isn't an end. It's an ebb and flow, a tide, not a trap door. And when a forgotten memory returns, unexpected, uninvited, unmistakable, it feels like a small miracle, a flower blooming in soil you thought was bare. You don't know where it was hiding, but you welcome it as if it had never left. So now, as you breathe a little deeper and your thoughts drift even slower, You might think of forgetting not as a failing, but as a gift, an act of kindness your brain offers you again and again. You don't have to remember everything. You're not meant to. There is beauty in the blur, grace in the gaps, and rest in knowing that what matters will remain. There's a moment, just before sleep, when thoughts become less like sentences and more like sensations, drifting shapes, flickers of color, sounds that don't quite make sense but still feel familiar. You're not dreaming yet, but the mind has begun to unlace itself, to loosen its grip on the tidy logic of the day. This is the realm where memory starts to play its stranger games. Because for all the beauty and power of memory, it isn't always what it seems. Sometimes, your mind remembers things that never happened, or remembers them wrong. The birthday that rained when it didn't. The friend who said something they didn't. The photograph you swear you remember being taken. Except, no one else remembers it that way. These aren't lies. They're illusions. Glitches in the fabric of your internal world. And they're surprisingly common. Your memory doesn't work like a video recorder. It doesn't capture life in perfect detail, frame by frame, waiting to be rewound. Instead, it's more like a puzzle you keep assembling from fragments, bits of sensory input, flashes of emotion, pieces of conversation. When you recall something, your brain fills in the missing pieces with what makes sense, with what fits the pattern, with what feels true. And often, it gets it right, but not always. There's something called a false memory. It's a memory that feels absolutely real, but isn't based in fact. You can recall it vividly, with detail, with emotion, and yet, it never happened. Maybe the details got scrambled. Maybe your brain wove together pieces of different moments. Or maybe your imagination quietly stepped in and painted something new. This isn't a flaw. It's a feature of how memory works. Because your brain values coherence over accuracy, it wants your memories to make sense, even if they aren't perfect reflections of reality. It patches holes, smooths edges, colors in the gaps, and the result is something that feels solid, even if it's not. Sometimes, the error is small, the color of a dress, the layout of a room, the sequence of events. Other times, it's bigger, a whole story remembered differently by two people, each one convinced of their version, each one sure they're right. Who's to say they're not? Memory is personal. It's shaped not just by what happens, but by who you are when it happens, by what you expect, what you fear, what you hope. Two people can live the same moment and walk away with completely different memories. Not because one is wrong, but because each brain writes its own version of the truth, and memory doesn't always wait for permission. Sometimes, it surfaces when you least expect it, uninvited, even unwanted, a flash of something you haven't thought about in years, a mistake, a triumph, a secret. It rises like steam from a warm road. You didn't ask for it, but there it is. And then, just as easily, memory can vanish. You walk into a room and forget why. You start a sentence and lose the thread halfway through. You reach for a name that you know, but it slips through your mental fingers like water. It's there, but not quite reachable. A tip-of-the-tongue feeling, familiar, and frustrating. This happens because memory is tied to attention, to context, to the rhythm of the brain at any given moment. You might not be able to retrieve a memory in one state, but in another. It comes easily. That's why you remember someone's name as soon as you stop trying, or recall the solution to a problem while brushing your teeth hours later. Memory is fickle that way, but it's also forgiving. Even when it falters, even when it tricks you, it's still doing what it was designed to do. Help you navigate your world, not with perfect accuracy, but with meaningful approximation. And sometimes, the trickiest part of memory isn't forgetting. It's remembering something that never was. There's a phenomenon known as the Mandela effect, named after a collective misremembering. Many people recalled Nelson Mandela dying in prison in the 1980s, even though he didn't. Entire groups of people share the same false memory, a logo that never looked the way you swore it did, a movie line that doesn't exist. It's strange, unsettling, and fascinating. But again, it tells you something powerful about how the mind works. Memory is not a solitary vault. It's social. It's shaped by conversations, media, stories, repetition. You remember not just what happened to you, but what others say happened, what was repeated, reinforced, believed. The brain, in its quiet efficiency, sometimes files away suggestion as fact, and the more often a false memory is revisited, the more real it becomes. Each retrieval strengthens the neural path, regardless of its accuracy. That's why eyewitness accounts can be unreliable. Not because people lie, but because their brains are filling in what they think they saw. It's not deception, it's construction. So what, then, is memory really? It's not a static recording, not a list of data points. It's a living, breathing story, one that's retold every time you remember, one that bends with you, shifts with your perspective, grows with your understanding. And maybe that's not a problem to be solved, but a wonder to be embraced. Because if memory were perfect, it might be less human, less poetic, less alive, and you, in this moment, still awake, still drifting, are part of that living story. Your memories are not frozen relics. They are ripples, movements, echoes, each one shaped not just by what was, but by who you are now. So, as the night deepens and your thoughts swirl like leaves in water, you can let them be imperfect. Let them surprise you. Let them wander, because even when memory plays tricks, it's still trying to tell you something true. The trickling thoughts of memory settle for a moment, and in their place, a quieter awareness arrives, one that stretches gently outward. It's subtle, but it's there. That soft sense of being part of something larger than yourself, not just in space, but in time, not just in feeling, but in remembering. Because memory, despite how personal it feels, is rarely created alone. You think of your memories as yours, private, internal, tucked safely inside your mind. But from your very first moments, the way you remember has been shaped by the people around you, by the language you've learned, the stories you've heard, the expressions you've mimicked, even the silences you've inherited. Long before you had words, you had mirrors, the eyes and faces of those who held you, reflected you, responded to you, and in those reflections, your earliest memories were scaffolded, not stored like files, but built like bridges. A parent pointing to a dog and saying, "Dog." A sibling calling you by name. A teacher showing you how to trace a letter. These are not just learning moments. They are memory molding ones. Shared experiences that become the architecture of how you store, recall, and narrate your life. In psychology, there's a term for this: scaffolding. When we're young, Adults around us help structure our memories by giving us the tools to frame them. They ask questions like, "Do you remember when we went to the park?" Or, "Wasn't that the day we saw the big red balloon?" These questions don't just test memory, they create it. They carve pathways by which memories can return. Even as adults, we continue to scaffold one another's memories, often without realizing it. A friend reminds you of a story you forgot. A photograph stirs up a detail you didn't know you remembered. Someone finishes your sentence, and suddenly, the memory feels shared. This is called collaborative remembering, and it's more than just conversation. It's a co-creation of history. When people recall together, their memories influence each other. Sometimes this strengthens accuracy. Sometimes it blurs the truth. But either way, it's real, because memory is not just about what happened, it's about how we remember it, and with whom. Even cultural memory works this way. The songs you grew up with, the holidays you celebrated, the way stories are passed down, and even what parts are left out. These aren't just backdrops to memory. They shape what you hold on to. They determine which moments are polished and which ones are tucked quietly away. Language plays a role, too. The very structure of the words you use influences how memories are formed. Some languages focus more on process, others on result. Some require you to indicate whether you witnessed something firsthand. All of this subtly sculpts your experience of time, cause, and detail. And then there are emotional echoes, the way other people's feelings about a memory color your own. If someone remembers a moment with fondness, you might begin to feel the same. If they speak of pain, your own recollection may darken. Emotion doesn't just live inside memories. It travels between people, quietly shaping the tone of what's remembered. Even silence can be a teacher. In some families, whole chapters are left unspoken. You might not know the details, but you feel the absence, the tension in a glance, the pause when a name is mentioned. These, too, become part of your memory landscape, not through facts, but through feeling. And feelings are contagious. You may have noticed how your memories feel stronger when shared, how telling a story out loud seems to etch it deeper. There's something about being witnessed, about being heard, that stabilizes memory, that makes it real. Social media, for better or worse, has become one of these witnesses. A digital diary shared in real time, photographs, captions, timestamps, likes that affirm a moment's worth. These platforms can freeze memories or distort them. We remember what was posted, what was shared, what was noticed. But what about the moments that weren't? The quiet ones, the in-between ones, the ones too tender, too strange, too small to be seen by others. They're still real, still important, still yours. And they, too, were shaped by others, even in their solitude. Because so often, the people we remember are not in the memory itself, but around it. Like the frame around a picture, the scent of someone's cologne in a moment of calm, the feeling of safety that allowed the memory to form at all. Your memories live inside you, but they also live in letters, in conversations, in recipes, in lullabies, in the way your voice softens when you say someone's name, in the way your handwriting matches your mother's, just a little, in the way you tell a story exactly the way your grandfather used to, same pauses, same grin, and when someone you love is gone, it's your memory that keeps a piece of them alive. But more than that, it's the shared memory, the way a story is passed between people, slowly, gently, altered just enough to be made your own. Memory is not a vault, it's a vessel, carried from hand to hand. So as you lie here, wrapped in quiet and thought, you can feel that connection to others, to the past, to the invisible threads that tie us together through time. You are remembering now, but you are not remembering alone. You can almost hear it now, just beneath the silence, a faint tune rising from memory like a ripple in still water. Maybe it's a lullaby, or a radio song from years ago, or just a melody that has no name but knows your soul by heart. Whatever it is, it carries something more than sound. It carries you, because music, more than nearly anything else, has the power to awaken memory in astonishing ways. You might forget dates, names, or places, but a song, a rhythm, a few opening notes, suddenly, you're transported. You're in a different time, a different place, wrapped in a feeling so familiar it aches. Music doesn't just trigger memories, it holds them, safely, gently, as if wrapped in velvet, waiting to be unwrapped. And the reason is both simple and wondrous. Music and memory share real estate in the brain. Unlike words or pictures, which are often processed in isolated regions, music lights up multiple areas at once. When you hear a song, your auditory cortex responds. Yes, but so do your motor regions, your emotional centers, your language systems. Music doesn't just travel in straight lines. It blooms like fireworks across your mental sky. And when music becomes personal, when it's tied to a moment, a face, a season, it fuses with memory in a way that's almost unshakable. That's why the right song can reduce you to tears, or make you smile involuntarily, or give you goosebumps even if decades have passed. It's not just nostalgia, it's neurological resonance. Scientists have found that musical memories are surprisingly resilient, even in people with Alzheimer's or severe memory loss. Familiar songs can bring moments of lucidity, faces remembered, lyrics sung, eyes lit up with recognition. Music reaches places that words cannot. There's a reason we sing to babies before they understand language. A reason we hum when we're nervous, or heartbroken, or in love. Music is memory's oldest companion, and it's deeply embodied. You don't just hear music, you feel it. The beat in your chest, the rhythm in your breath, the movement in your muscles. Your body becomes part of the memory, dancing quietly to its own remembered song. Sometimes, a single chord progression is enough to rewind time. You hear it and you're back at a school dance, or in the passenger seat of a car, windows down, or staring at a ceiling, heart wide open, waiting for someone who didn't come. Music makes memory cinematic. It gives it color, texture, and pulse. It doesn't just remind you what happened, it reminds you how it felt. And sometimes, you remember music without memory. A song might stir something in you before you even realize why. The lyrics come out of your mouth before your mind knows they were still there. Your fingers tap along, your body knows. Even in silence, music lingers. Earworms, those loops that repeat in your head long after the music has stopped, are one example. But deeper still are the tunes your mind turns to in moments of stillness or stress. A childhood hymn, a parent's favorite ballad, a commercial jingle from when you were small. They surface when you need comfort, or familiarity, or even courage. And they remind you that memory is more than facts. It is rhythm, emotion, repetition, echo. Some songs become tied to people. You can't hear them without seeing a face, feeling a presence. Sometimes it's beautiful. Sometimes it hurts. Often, it's both. You might try to avoid a certain melody because of what it brings with it. Or you might play it again and again just to feel close to something or someone you've lost. Music makes memory tactile. You can hold it, not with your hands, but with your heart. And the act of creating music etches memory even deeper. Learning to play an instrument, singing in a choir, or simply tapping out rhythms on a desk. These aren't just expressions. They're forms of encoding, of stitching memory into muscle and sound. Think of a song you once practiced again and again. Even if you haven't played it in years, your fingers might still remember. The melody might still rise up from within, unbidden but welcome. Music is one of the few things that touches all layers of memory: short-term, long-term, emotional, procedural. It brings together the knowing, the feeling, the doing, all in one flowing motion. And perhaps this is why, in so many cultures, memory is sung, history passed down through chants, ballads, laments, the human story wrapped in melody so it won't be forgotten, even when writing fades, even when paper crumbles, because a song can survive, and so can the memory it carries. So tonight, as you lie here in this soft, musical quiet, you might begin to notice the soundtrack of your own life. Not the playlist you made last week, but the deeper one, the one that lives inside you, that grew with you, that played faintly beneath every chapter. There's a song for beginnings, for endings, for heartbreak and healing, for leaving home and coming back again. You don't always remember the words, but you remember the way they made you feel, and sometimes, when you need it most, the melody returns, familiar, faithful, just like memory. As the final notes of that inner melody fade into quiet, something deeper begins to settle in, a kind of stillness that's not just physical, but personal. You feel more like yourself, though it's hard to explain why. Perhaps it's the music, or perhaps it's the way memory gently folds your life together into something that feels continuous, coherent, you. Because memory is not just a record of what you've done, it's the foundation of who you are. Every remembered moment, every story you carry, every detail you've held onto through the years, they form the scaffolding of your identity. Without them, the narrative of you would lose its thread. There would be facts, yes, but no story to link them, no through line, no I to say, this is mine, this is me. Memory isn't just what happened. It's how you've made sense of what happened. The moment you introduce yourself, you're drawing from memory. The second you tell someone what you love, what you fear, what you believe in, you're recalling moments that taught you those things. Identity, it turns out, is stitched together not from isolated facts, but from meaning, shaped and reshaped by what you remember. Think about it. Who would you be without your memories? You might still have preferences, instincts, habits, but would you feel connected to yourself? Would the version of you from 5 years ago, or 5 decades ago, still seem like the same person? Most likely, no, because identity depends on continuity, on a thread that connects then to now, and memory is that thread. That's why, when memories begin to fray, in illness, in trauma, in grief, it can feel like losing yourself, not just forgetting a detail, but feeling untethered from your own story. like standing in a house with no furniture, still there, but empty, unfamiliar, and yet your memory isn't static. It evolves with you. You don't just recall your past, you reconstruct it, you retell it, and in doing so, you shape your present self. You decide what to highlight, what to downplay, which moments become landmarks, and which ones fade quietly into the background. It's not about being dishonest. It's about being human. You're constantly writing and rewriting the story of who you are based on what you remember and how you choose to remember it. This is why two people with the same childhood can grow into such different adults. It's not just what happened, it's which parts of the story took root, which memories became anchors, which meanings were drawn from them. Memory is interpretive, emotional, selective. And that's not a flaw, it's a form of selfhood. Even your future identity is shaped by memory. When you imagine who you'll be someday, you draw on who you've been, your goals, your dreams, your expectations. All of them are shaped by what you've seen yourself survive, by what you remember loving, losing, building. Your memory is a mirror, but it's also a map, and it's fluid. Sometimes, a long-forgotten moment resurfaces, and it changes the way you see yourself. You recall an act of kindness you dismissed, or a time you stood up for something that mattered, and suddenly, your self-image shifts. You realize, I've always had that strength in me. Other times, a memory dissolves, fades away, or is recontextualized. What once felt defining becomes distant. What once seemed like failure now feels like growth. This is how memory allows you to evolve without falling apart, to remain you, even as you changes. And there's comfort in that, especially in moments of uncertainty. When the present feels unfamiliar, you can reach back and find continuity, a story that holds, a thread you can follow back to something true. That's why rituals matter, why we revisit the same songs, the same places, the same stories. They remind us who we are and who we've been. They reinforce the narrative. They root us. And this isn't limited to individuals. Families have memory too. Communities, nations, cultures, shared stories create shared identity. They offer a sense of belonging, of history, of meaning, and just like personal memories, these collective stories evolve. They're told and retold, revised, reclaimed, sometimes challenged, sometimes cherished. You inherit some of these memories, not directly, but through the stories you're told, the traditions you follow, the names you carry, even the silences you keep. And yet, no matter how many memories are shared, your identity remains uniquely yours, because you alone live inside your story. You alone feel the echoes. You alone decide how to interpret the chapters. That's why memory loss, whether temporary or permanent, can feel so disorienting. It's not just forgetting an event, it's losing a piece of your reflection, a thread in your narrative. It's why patients with dementia sometimes feel like strangers in their own lives, and why loved ones cling so tightly to photographs, journals, familiar routines, hoping to anchor what feels like it's drifting. But even when memory slips, identity is not completely lost. Sometimes it lives in gestures, in habits, in a tone of voice, a look in the eyes, in the way someone smiles without quite knowing why. Fragments remain, a presence, even in absence, because identity, like memory, is resilient. So now, as you lie here beneath a quilt of your own thoughts, some remembered clearly, others soften by time. You might feel a gentle pride in all the selves you've been, all the moments that built you, all the stories you carry. You don't have to recall every detail to know who you are. The essential parts remain. They hum beneath your breath. They pulse in your heartbeat. They whisper in your sleep. You are a story still unfolding. And memory is the ink. You shift ever so slightly beneath the covers, not fully awake, but not fully gone either. There's a delicate edge to this moment, like standing at the shoreline of your own mind. You're aware of the waves lapping quietly in the dark, but some feel unfamiliar. Some come in broken. What happens when memory falters? When the lines that once connected your thoughts begin to blur? When the thread you've followed all your life becomes tangled or thin? We don't like to think about it, but forgetting is not always gentle. Sometimes it comes with fear. Sometimes it comes with confusion. And sometimes it comes so slowly, so quietly, that you barely notice until one day you do. You forget where you left your keys or why you walked into a room. You forget the name of someone you just met. These things are normal. They happen to everyone. Memory is not perfect, and it's not meant to be. But when forgetting becomes more than occasional, when it begins to interrupt the rhythm of daily life, it becomes something else entirely. It becomes a fracture. Conditions like Alzheimer's disease, dementia, and other neurodegenerative disorders don't just affect memory. They affect identity, relationships, safety, presence. They chip away at the scaffolding that holds a person's world together. One name, one word, one moment at a time. And yet, even here, memory doesn't vanish all at once. It frays, it thins, it hides. There are often moments of clarity in the fog, a face remembered, a song sung word for word, a laugh at an old joke. These glimmers remind us memory isn't gone. It's just harder to reach. Imagine trying to recall something with a light bulb that flickers unpredictably. Some days it's bright, some days it's dim, some days it doesn't turn on at all. That's what many people with memory loss live with, a mind that won't always answer when called. But it's still there, and it still feels. Even when a person forgets names, they may still feel love. They may still feel safety when someone holds their hand. They may still cry at a melody from long ago, even if they don't remember why. Emotion outlives detail. Feeling remains when fact does not. That's why connection matters more than correction. If someone with memory loss calls you by the wrong name, correcting them may not help, but meeting them with warmth, with kindness, with presence, that does. Because in that moment, they are reaching for something real. And what they need is not just information, but recognition, a sense of still being seen. It's easy to feel helpless watching someone's memory fade, but even in the midst of forgetting, there is meaning. There is still joy, still humor, still moments of grace. Caregivers often speak of the long goodbye, the slow, unfolding process of losing someone not all at once, but in pieces. It can be heartbreaking, exhausting, but also tender, because in that slowness, there's room to love someone exactly as they are, without expectation, without who they used to be, just now, and sometimes a flicker returns, a name remembered, a story told, a moment of recognition so pure it brings tears. You hold your breath, afraid to move, afraid to lose it. But that's the thing. Memory doesn't always need to be held tight. Sometimes it just needs to be witnessed. And sometimes, memory breaks not through disease, but through trauma. The brain, in its effort to protect, may block or fragment certain memories. Events too overwhelming to process may become buried, split, distorted, forgotten. Not because they were unimportant, but because they were too important, too dangerous to feel again. This is not weakness, it is survival. The mind has ways of keeping you safe, even from yourself, but the cost is heavy. Trauma-related memory loss can leave people feeling disconnected, confused, unsure of what's real. It can take years, or a lifetime, to piece together what was lost. And even then, healing isn't about perfect recall. It's about making peace with what surfaces, letting memory return in its own time, in its own way. When it's safe to be remembered, there is also grief in forgetting, not just for those who forget, but for those who are forgotten. To be forgotten by someone you love, to look into their eyes and not be recognized, is a kind of pain few things can match. It feels like erasure, like being made invisible, like history being unwritten in real time. But love is not erased, even when memory is. It lives in the way you speak to them, in the way you sit beside them, in the way you keep telling the stories, even when they no longer nod along. You become their memory. You carry what they no longer can, and that is no small thing. It's a kind of sacred work, to remember for another, to honor what was, to be the keeper of a story when its author can no longer write it. So, if your own memory falters someday, as it might, perhaps you'll find comfort in knowing that others will hold pieces of your story, that the love you've given will echo in someone else's mind, that your laughter, your favorite phrase, your particular way of tying a scarf or making tea, these things live on. Memory may break, but meaning does not. And as you lie here now, eyes soft, breath slow, you might feel your own memories, fragile or firm, still alive within you, still yours, even the broken ones, especially the broken ones. Because sometimes the cracks let the light back in. You shift slightly, maybe without meaning to. A small stretch in your fingers, a soft twitch in your leg. You weren't thinking about moving, but your body moved anyway. Familiar, practiced, effortless. This, too, is memory. Not the kind that recalls names or birthdays, but a quieter, older kind. The memory that lives in muscle, in movement, in rhythm. The body remembers in its own language, spoken not in words, but in gestures and flow. It's called procedural memory. The part of your memory that knows how to do things, even when you're not consciously thinking about them. Tying shoelaces, riding a bicycle, typing on a keyboard, holding a spoon. You don't recite instructions. You simply move. The memory is in the doing. And what's remarkable is that this kind of memory is often the most resilient. People with memory loss may forget names, places, or faces, but their hands still know how to play a song on the piano. Their feet remember the steps to a dance. Their fingers trace the same path through a rosary, or knit stitches they have made 1,000 times before. The body keeps the memory even when the mind lets go. This is why physical therapy often feels like rediscovery, not learning from scratch, but unearthing something that was there all along, buried, perhaps, dormant, but not gone. The body is a kind of archive, storing not just motion, but emotion. Think of how your shoulders rise when you're anxious, how your stomach tightens when you're nervous, how your breath slows when you're safe. These aren't random reactions. They're learned patterns, imprinted through repetition. Over time, they become reflexes, the route you drive without thinking, the words you mouth when brushing your teeth in front of the mirror, the way you reach for the same light switch, even in a new room, the way your hand knows to comfort a friend without asking permission from your brain. Even posture has memory. Sit a certain way for long enough, and it becomes default. Move through the world with a certain rhythm, and your body adapts. That's not habit alone. It's cellular remembering. It's tissue learning what works and repeating it. Athletes, dancers, and musicians know this intimately. Practice becomes pattern. Pattern becomes instinct. Hours of repetition transform thought into motion. The conscious fades. What remains is fluency, the body performing without the need for narration. But it's not just physical skills. Your body stores experiences too, not in a metaphorical sense, but in a physiological one. Trauma, for instance, is often remembered not through clear images, but through sensation. A racing heart, a clenched jaw, a sudden wave of unease in a familiar place. The memory might not be available in words, but the body knows. It reacts. It remembers. And in healing, that same body memory can become a guide. Breath work, movement therapy, yoga. These aren't just exercises. They're ways of speaking back to the body, of saying, I hear you. I'm here now. It's okay. Even touch holds memory. The softness of a certain fabric. The way a loved one used to hold your hand. The pressure of a hug that made everything feel better. Your skin, your nerves, they remember. They recognize what is familiar, what is comforting, what is safe, and safety. Once felt, becomes a blueprint. It's why returning to a childhood bed, or an old garden path, or a particular rocking chair can bring a sense of calm that words cannot explain. The body remembers the feeling and brings it back, whole and intact. Sometimes, you remember something only when you repeat a movement, the way your fingers fumble across a piano, until suddenly the melody returns, or how your legs seem to know which street to turn down in a city you haven't visited in years. Memory lies dormant until called upon, and when it answers, it feels almost like magic. But it isn't magic, it's biology. It's the exquisite design of a body built not just to move, but to know. Even your immune system has memory. When you encounter a virus or bacteria, your body learns and remembers. It stores that information to protect you later. A kind of defense-based memory that operates far below consciousness but safeguards you every day. Your gut has memory too, a complex system of neurons known as the enteric nervous system, sometimes called the second brain. It plays a role in emotion, instinct, and decision-making. Those butterflies you feel, that sinking sensation in your stomach, they're not just poetic metaphors. They're signals. They're echoes from a place deep within you that remembers in its own way. And even your breath, so simple, so constant, is shaped by memory. You were born knowing how to breathe, but the way you breathe now is a learned pattern. Fast, slow, shallow, deep. It adjusts with emotion, with experience. It adapts. It remembers. And when you return to calm, your breath often leads the way. So now, as your own breath finds its rhythm, you might begin to notice just how much your body holds, not just pain or habit, but strength, joy, wisdom, memories that live in your fingertips, in your shoulders, in your spine. And when words begin to blur, when names or facts slip into shadow, your body still remembers the most important parts: how to care, how to move, how to return to itself. You are not just a mind remembering a life. You are a body living it. Every gesture, every breath, every heartbeat, a quiet, continuous remembering, still with you, still unfolding. As you lie still, your body resting deeper into the mattress, your breath steady, a new thought floats gently through the quiet. It's not about you this time. It's about the world beyond, about other minds, other lives, other creatures who carry memory in ways both familiar and foreign. Because you're not the only one who remembers. Animals remember too, not just in instinct or reflex, but in rich, complex, astonishing ways, in decisions, in grief, in affection. Their memories are not carbon copies of ours, but they're not so different either. Take elephants, for instance. An elephant never forgets, the saying goes, and while that might be an exaggeration, it's not without truth. Elephants are renowned for their long memories, especially the matriarchs, who lead their herds across vast distances using mental maps of terrain, water sources, and danger zones. They remember paths they haven't walked in years. They recall droughts and seasons and even old rivalries. But their memories are not just practical, they're emotional too. Elephants have been observed returning to the bones of deceased relatives, touching them with their trunks, pausing in a kind of silent ritual. Some show signs of mourning, lingering where a companion once died, or growing subdued after a loss. Memory, for them, is not just spatial, it is relational. And then there are birds. Clark's nutcrackers, a type of crow, can remember the location of thousands of food caches buried months earlier. They navigate these invisible maps with remarkable precision. How? Not with smell, not with sight, with memory. Crows and ravens, too, are masters of memory. They recognize human faces, even years after an encounter, and they remember how they were treated. A crow harassed by a person will avoid them long afterward, and may even alert other crows to the threat. Their remembering isn't just personal, it's communal. And what about octopuses? These soft-bodied marvels, with their alien appearance and sprawling arms, have demonstrated striking short and long-term memory in lab settings. They can solve puzzles, navigate mazes, and even show preference for certain humans. An octopus may learn that a particular researcher brings food, and another only watches. Over time, it remembers and responds. Even your pet at home, a cat, a dog, a rabbit, carries memory that goes deeper than you might expect. Dogs remember voices, smells, routines. They recall the sound of your car, the time of day you return, the rustle of the treat bag. But more than that, they remember relationships. A dog may not know the date of your birthday, but it knows the tone you use when you're sad, the shape of your walk, the rhythm of your affection. Cats, too, remember places and people, even if they pretend not to. They recall where they were fed, where they felt safe, where something frightened them. Their memory influences their territory, their trust, their timing. Memory in animals doesn't need to be identical to ours to be real. We tend to associate memory with language, but language is only one way to store experience. Animals remember through sensation, through smell, through movement, through emotion. And in this way, their memories might be even more embodied than ours. Migrating whales follow ancient routes passed from mother to calf. They return to breeding grounds thousands of miles away, year after year, not by compass, but by a memory etched deep in the body. Sea turtles hatch on a beach and return decades later to lay eggs on that very same shore, guided by the Earth's magnetic field and something else we don't yet fully understand. A memory, perhaps, beyond memory. Even small creatures, bees, ants, fish, show forms of learning and memory. A bee can remember which flowers yield the best nectar. An ant can recall the scent trail to a food source. A goldfish can be trained to recognize sounds associated with feeding. None of these behaviors are accidental. They are built on memory, encoded in patterns of repetition and reward. So, what does it mean, then, to realize that memory is not just a human trait? It means that the story of remembering is older than we imagined, that the ability to carry the past into the present, to adapt, respond, and reflect, runs deep through the tree of life. It means that memory is not a luxury of intelligence, but a necessity of existence. Even insects must remember to survive. Even fish must learn what to fear. Even a fruit fly has been shown to form simple associations between stimulus and response. And this suggests something even more profound, that memory may be one of the very first signs of awareness, that the moment a creature begins to remember, it begins to be in a new way. It may not reflect, it may not narrate, but it remembers. And in remembering, it becomes more than a reaction. It becomes a story. So, as you drift in your own quiet space tonight, you might find comfort in this shared thread, this ancient rhythm of remembering, from the elephant walking through sun-bleached plains to the octopus curling in a coral crevice, from the crow watching you with curious eyes to the dog curled at your feet. We all carry pieces of the past. We all stitch meaning from experience. Even the wind knows where it's been. Even the stars hold memory in their light. And you, one part of this vast remembering, are never truly alone in your reflection. Because memory is not just a human gift. It is life, thinking softly of itself. You breathe in softly, and this time, it's not the rhythm of thought that stirs. It's feeling, a quiet swell in your chest. Maybe it's comfort or longing. Maybe it's something you can't quite name, but it lingers, like the warmth of someone's hand just after they've let go. Because memory is never just about facts. It's about emotion. Every moment you remember, really remember, is colored by how it made you feel. The joy of a childhood summer, the fear in a doctor's waiting room, the ache of a goodbye, the quiet pride of doing something for the first time. These aren't just stories, they're states, and the body remembers them as clearly as the mind does. Emotion doesn't just decorate memory, it sculpts it. When something makes you feel deeply, your brain flags it as important. The amygdala, the brain's emotional alarm bell, lights up. It nudges the hippocampus, the memory center, and says, "This matters." And because of that signal, the memory is stored with more clarity, more strength, more persistence. This is why your most vivid memories are often emotional ones. It's also why emotion can distort memory. Heightened feelings, fear, excitement, grief, can sharpen some details while blurring others. You remember the expression on someone's face, but forget what they said. You recall the sound of the siren, but not where you were standing. You relive the mood, not the map. But that emotional imprint stays. Long after the context fades, the feeling remains, and sometimes it returns before the memory does. You might feel uneasy without knowing why, and only later recall what the day reminds you of. Or you may feel a sudden warmth when entering a room, because it's filled with the same light that once fell across your grandmother's kitchen. The emotion leads, the memory follows. Sometimes they arrive hand in hand. Other times, feeling is all that's left, like a ghost with no story attached. But even that ghost has something to tell you, because emotions act as the brain's internal highlighter. They say, pay attention to this. They make memory stick, but they also reshape it. Every time you revisit a memory, your current emotion seeps into it. You tint it with who you are now, you soften it, or harden it, or let it grow. A moment of anger, remembered in peace, can become forgiveness. A moment of joy, recalled in sorrow, can become bittersweet. And this layering never stops. Every time you remember, you are both revisiting the past and rewriting it. Not the facts, but the feeling. This is why stories evolve, why the same tale told by the same person changes over time. The core may stay, but the emotional texture shifts. You're not lying, you're growing, and your memories grow with you. Some emotional memories are so strong they resist time entirely. These are called flashbulb memories. Moments so vivid, so intense, that they freeze in place. You remember where you were, what you were wearing, the smell in the air. You don't just recall them, you relive them. But even these are not as fixed as they seem. Studies show that flashbulb memories can shift, despite our confidence in them. We feel certain, but certainty is not accuracy. It's emotional resonance, the echo of impact, and that echo rings loudest in moments of transition, firsts, lasts, losses, milestones. These emotional bookmarks define chapters in your life. The first time you fell in love, the last time you saw someone, the moment a truth clicked into place. They are anchors, memory's deepest roots. But what about quiet emotions? What about the small tendernesses, the feeling of being understood, the calm of sitting beside someone in silence, the fleeting comfort of eye contact in a crowded room? These, too, are remembered, and sometimes more gently, more durably, because they happen often and always with meaning. And meaning is what gives emotion its weight. A moment becomes memorable not only because it's emotional, but because it meant something. A child's drawing on a fridge, a note tucked into a lunchbox, a stranger's kindness. These aren't big stories, but they're bright. They shine softly from within. And then there are the emotions we try not to remember. Embarrassment, shame, regret. These, too, live in memory's archive, sometimes tucked into the back shelves, sometimes front and center. They return when we least want them, but they return for a reason. They remind us where we've been, how we've changed, what we've learned. They are not punishments, they are signals. And when we allow ourselves to feel them, even gently, even briefly, they soften, they lose their sharpness. They become part of the story, not the whole of it, because memory is not just what happened, it's what you felt and what you carry. Even dreams remember emotion. You might wake up unsure of the dream's plot, but the feeling lingers, like a scent on a sweater. Fear, joy, confusion, relief. The brain records the state, even when it forgets the scene. This is how the emotional archive works. It doesn't store your life in neat files. It weaves feelings into the very fabric of your being, into how you speak, how you move, how you respond to the world. And this emotional memory shapes not just your past, but your present. It informs your reactions, guides your instincts, helps you recognize safety or danger or love. You trust a person because something about them feels familiar. You avoid a place because your body remembers a feeling it can't explain. You return to someone or somewhere because it feels like home, and that feeling is the memory, even if you can't name it. So now, as you lie here with the weight of the day behind you, you might sense that emotional memory settling too, not as a burden, but as a blanket, a soft layer of everything you've felt, everything that's helped you grow, the joy, the pain, the awe, the grace, all of it held, all of it remembered. And tomorrow, when you wake, you may not recall this exact moment, but your body will remember the calm, and that too is enough. The silence around you has deepened now. Even your thoughts seem quieter, like they're speaking in whispers instead of words. You feel suspended, not lost, but floating, somewhere between now and then, between what you know and what you once knew. And you begin to wonder, when memories fade, where do they go? Do they vanish, like steam in the cold? Do they fall into some dark archive, untouched and undisturbed? Or do they transform, like seeds blown into a different field, buried, waiting for the right moment to bloom again? We often think of forgetting as loss, but perhaps it's more like migration. Memory doesn't always disappear. Sometimes it just moves somewhere quieter. In the brain, memories that are no longer accessed frequently don't necessarily die. They become inaccessible, harder to reach, tucked away in unused neural pathways, like a house at the end of a long-forgotten road. The lights are still on, but the path has grown wild. Sometimes, a memory returns without warning, fully formed, a scent, a voice, a single word, and suddenly you're 10 years old again, standing barefoot on a kitchen floor. The memory wasn't gone, it just needed the right door. So, maybe memory is less like a filing system and more like a forest, dense, living, interconnected. Some trails are cell-worn, others hidden beneath vines. Some memories live in the treetops, vivid, clear, present. Others lie beneath the soil, part of the ecosystem, unseen but essential. And in this forest, forgetting isn't erasure, it's overgrowth, the brain choosing which paths to keep clear and which ones to let rest. But what about the memories that never come back? The ones we lose not to time, but to trauma, illness, age? Are they truly gone? It's a question science still wrestles with. In some cases, the neural patterns of those memories may still exist, ghost circuits preserved in the folds of the brain, but without access, they feel absent. And yet, occasionally, even after years, something stirs them. A dream, a song, a smell. And just like that, the forest gives way. Of course, not all memories return intact. Some come back altered, reshaped by time and emotion. Like a photograph left too long in the sun, they fade at the edges. But that doesn't mean they're worthless. A faded memory still holds warmth, still holds meaning. Even fragments can comfort, even pieces can guide. And then there are memories that never form at all. You experience something, but it doesn't stick. A face you saw, a conversation you had, a street you walked, the moment passes, unrecorded. Was it not important? Or did your mind simply choose not to keep it? Memory is selective. That's its nature. It holds what feels significant and lets go of what doesn't, or what can't be carried. But here's the beautiful part. Just because a memory fades doesn't mean its effect is gone. You may not remember every lesson you've learned, but you carry the wisdom. You may not remember every hug you received as a child, but your body still knows what safety feels like. You may not recall every time someone forgave you, but your heart learned how to be softer. These are memories that leave no image, no scene, only shape. They sculpt who you are without asking to be named. And sometimes, a memory is not meant to stay. Sometimes, forgetting is an act of kindness, a letting go that makes space for what's new, what's needed, what's now. There are people you once knew who no longer live in your thoughts, not because they didn't matter, but because the part they played has ended. That chapter has closed, and memory, like story, knows when to move on, but even as you forget, you grow. The past may not walk beside you every day, but it lives in your posture, your preferences, your patience. It lives in the way you love, in the way you listen, in the way you notice a stranger's sadness and choose to speak gently. These are echoes, memory not as recollection, but as character. So, when you ask, where do memories go? Perhaps the answer is this. They go into your hands, into your breath, into your choices, into your quiet understanding of the world. They go into the people you've touched, the ones who remember you, even as you forget yourself. They go into the moments you live today, which are shaped by yesterday's shadows, even if you no longer see them. And when your own memory falters, as all memory eventually will, these echoes will remain, not just in your mind, but in others. Someone will remember your laugh, the way you folded towels, the way you always left the light on for them, and in remembering you, they will carry part of your memory forward. So, maybe memories don't go away. Maybe they go on, past gently, like stories told in a soft voice. Like hands pressing seeds into soil they'll never see bloom. And now, as the night presses gently around you, you may feel some of your own memories shifting, some rising closer, some sinking back. That's okay. You don't have to hold them all. You just have to rest in the knowledge that they held you. And in many ways, still do. Because memory is not just what we keep. It's what keeps us. And now, as the forest of memory settles behind you, the trail soft and fading underfoot, you arrive at a kind of hush, not the hush of absence, but of peace. A clearing where you don't have to hold on to anything, not even your own thoughts. You've wandered far, through neurons and nostalgia, through body and breath, through the laughter of animals and the quiet tears of forgotten days. And still, memory drifts all around you like the gentle fall of snow, each flake a whisper of something once lived, once felt, once known. This is the part of the night where you no longer need to wonder, not about how memory works, not about where it lives, not even about what you might forget tomorrow, because here, in this moment, you're allowed to just be, to rest, to exhale the weight of everything you've remembered, and maybe even the weight of remembering itself. There's a kind of mercy in this part of the night, a softness that asks nothing, a quiet that isn't empty, but full of all the things you don't have to name, the kind of quiet that holds you without question. You begin to notice the rhythm of your own breath again, how it anchors you, how it hums with familiarity, in and out, in and out. Each inhale drawing in the present, each exhale releasing the past. It doesn't matter now if you forget what you've heard. You might, but somewhere inside you, the story remains. Not as a script, not as a list of facts, but as a kind of warmth, a hum, a stillness, the memory of being remembered. And that, in the end, is the gentle paradox of it all. We chase memory, try to preserve it, protect it, catalog it, but some of the most meaningful memories aren't the ones we hold tight. They're the ones that held us. The lullaby you don't remember the words to, but still makes you feel safe. The long drive home that blurred into landscape and music. The first time someone said, "You're not alone," and you believed them, even if you've forgotten their name. These are not things you keep in boxes. They're things that kept you, so you can let go. Now, let go of the need to hold every piece. Let go of the worry that you're forgetting something important. You're not a vault, you're a river. And memory flows through you, shaping you as it moves. Even when you don't see where it's going, it leaves traces in your laughter, in your kindness, in the way you hold a cup of tea just the way your father used to, in the way you hum a tune your grandmother once sang. These are the footprints of memory, not loud, not sharp, but steady, familiar, true. And as you float here, in the slow rhythm of your own breath, the night becomes something more than a backdrop. It becomes a vessel, holding you and all the moments that made you. You are not defined by what you remember. You are revealed by how memory lives through you, in gesture, in instinct, in presence. You are still you, even when the details fade, even when the names blur, even when the stories slip into softness. The core remains. And tonight, as you sink even deeper into quiet, that core is simply this: you have lived and been loved and remembered by yourself and by others, maybe even by the stars, because somewhere in the great archive of the universe, your breath has been recorded, your laugh, your weeping, your wonder, not in some cosmic file cabinet, but in the way the world has moved because of you. A small shift, a single ripple, a kindness remembered. And so, as this story closes and your eyes grow heavier, you are not stepping away from memory. You are stepping into it, into the dreamlike space where memory doesn't need to be named, only felt. Let the forest dim, let the stars blink slowly. Let your body grow warm and weightless, and trust that everything you are, every memory that matters, is still here, carried gently by the current of sleep. You are safe, you are whole, you are remembered. Let go, let the night hold you, let memory drift where it will, and let yourself drift, too.